I met someone who I chatted to one evening at a badminton match and said, don't know what I'm going to do. I told him I wanted to grow plants for sale, and he said, well, I've got a garden, or I've got a nursery, and I grow trees and shrubs, and there's a bit of ground and you can come and grow your alpines and perennials. And it was as simple as that. And I took over a poor piece of ground and started from that. Ian started to propagate with a view. He had very specific ideas as to what he wanted to produce. The thing that we had discussed, he and I, was that the one thing about gentians was that they grew in pots for sale, but they fell all over the place. And he realised that we needed to have more compact, more upright plants that could be grown in a pot. And he took that as the way he wanted to move forward, and he selected cultivars to produce that upright and tight look. And he worked, and we produced thousands and thousands of gentians. It was Ian's job. I let him do what he wanted with it. And it was really quite interesting, and he produced this huge range, and we threw thousands away. Thousands, and that was the thing, that he was very insistent that, unlike a lot of the modern propagators who find just something very small and accept it as something different, he wouldn't do that. He produced a lot of good plants, and he was very self-critical. This happened over we're talking about 15 years that this was going on, a long time, till he produced this select group. And this was one of the early gentians that it starts flowering in July and August. This is Balmoral. And the story of Balmoral was that it was the Queen's Jubilee, and Ian liked it and decided that he wanted to name it for when the Queen goes to Balmoral for a holiday. And he was aware that August was when the royal family were in Balmoral, and that it would be something for Balmoral. So he wrote to the Queen and said, I've named this plant Balmoral, and I would like to present you with some. And a very nice letter came back saying, lovely, we'd love to have some. And we arrived, and we had to stop at the gates. Well, the police came over and spoke to us. And of course, to our great amusement, a lot of the people, bystanders, were busy taking photographs because they thought they got personalities. But little did they realise they got a couple of gardeners going with some plants. But anyway, we took them to the nursery part of the estate, and we're very fortunate to be allowed to go and wander around with the gardener and shown around, who took us to in front of the house at Balmoral and said, if the Queen wants to see you, she'll come out and speak to you. And we looked around at this top bit, and lo and behold, the door opened and out came Her Majesty and her dogs. And it was great fun, and we chatted for quite a long time about the garden at Balmoral and about the situation, about how cold it was and blah. It was really quite an interesting little experience, and she was absolutely thrilled with gentians. And when Ian said to her, we have a white one which I've produced as well, which is called Oban, she said, Her Majesty said, a white gentian? Oh, you don't have white gentians, are meant to be blue. So that was that. So we never mentioned the white gentian from then on. But in the meantime, these have grown as part of the group of gentians that were specifically grown for pots. And George Anderson was the president at the time of the bicentennial of the Cali, and he came and said to Ian, had we got a gentian that could be named? And so Ian and George looked at some of Ian's experimental stuff that was, you'd have them in one numbers. So they selected this particular plant, which is called the Cali, and it was then up to us as a nursery to multiply it up and produce enough so that in its bicentenary year we had a small number which we were able to sell to Cali members, and anybody who wanted a gentian was able to request. In the meantime, we were busily working the nursery to... So now we have them in full production, and they're really very attractive. This Cali one, which was duly named and used, is a hugely successful plant. The remit was that it had to flower the beginning of October when it was the bicentenary. And so something like Balmoral, which is almost finished flowering because it flowered in August, leads on to something like the Cali, which is the beginning of October. So it's a delightful plant that has so much going for it. Upright and nice sort of markings on the outers as well as on the inners, and it's tough. It's proven itself in gardens. People are able to grow it and produce a lot, but again, it's perfect as a pot plant. This particular plant was one that Ian won the George Forrest Medal at the Scottish Rock Garden Club show with. And to my amazement, you see his neglectful wife really has just left it in the pot and hasn't done anything with it. And yet here, once again, I mean, this must be at least 3-4 years old, and I've never done anything with it except water it and kept it going. So it proves the strength of the plant.